Hi, I'm Daryl Brown, and welcome to Shades of Us, a show that explores multicultural identities and how they intersect. We're here at Stonewall National Monument in Christopher Park, located in New York City's historic Greenwich Village area, which has long been central to the identity of the LGBTQ+ friendly community. The triangular landscape has played an important role in the history of the gay rights movement since the late 1960s. This is one of the many spaces that have been instrumental for those in the gay community to feel represented and proud. We'll hear from a few queer voices who are discussing their journeys to self-discovery and the impact it has had on their lives. We'll tell you more about these guests right after this. According to a 2024 Gallup poll on LGBTQ+ identification in the US, 7.6% of US adults identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or some other sexual orientation besides heterosexual. This number is up from 5.6% in 2020. Some people don't neatly fall into the category of either male or female, and many of these people identify as non-binary. One non-binary CUNY master's student tells us their story.
My name is Vanessa Brown. I'm a master's student in astrophysics at the CUNY Graduate Center. I am also a published science fiction author. My debut novella was a sci-fi horror titled The Scourge Between Stars. I identify as non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. I came to identify as being non-binary after taking a long look at my childhood and my journey to adulthood, where I realized slowly over time that I felt a lot of discomfort around the label of woman alone. I have many memories of feeling chafed by even kind endearments such as "you're such a sweet girl" and other comments like that, which were meant to be complimentary but which felt that they really rankled. I remember begging my parents to get my clothes from the boys' side of the store, and I wanted the way that people address me and the way that I dress and express myself to not be purely feminine in nature. When I learned about what it meant to be non-binary and that there was this option, this additional option for identification, ultimately I discovered that it really resonated with me. I am mixed race. My father was African American and my mother is Caucasian. Initially, I felt unclear on whether or not I truly identified as non-binary or if I simply felt a race-based distance from femininity, in that Black women are often considered unfeminine. And initially, when I was exploring my gender, I had wondered if maybe because society had hinted that I was less feminine or had less connection to the idea, that maybe that's why I felt the distance from the label woman. But as I explored the idea a bit more, as I grew into my mixed race identity a bit more, I felt very comfortable in my racial identity, and that's not what was prompting this need for exploration in me. When I came to the CUNY Graduate Center and I had the opportunity to introduce myself anew as a master's student and also into a new community, I decided to take the leap, publicly identify as non-binary, and publicly use they, them pronouns. And all of my experiences since then have confirmed that that was the right choice for me. My husband is a cis man, so he has identified as a man his whole life. And when I decided to be very public about my identity, he was very confused about the concept, since he, like myself, before understanding who I am and how I identify, had no exposure to the idea of being non-binary, and certainly no experience with which to approach the situation. But he, like everyone else I've been blessed to encounter so far in this journey has been nothing but supportive. Even when he has no idea what any of these terms mean or the grammar of certain pronouns, he always tries his best to make sure that I continue to feel understood and free to be exactly as I am. Having a husband and also identifying as non-binary, the importance of having it be recognized that I'm non-binary is that is how I feel most seen. My journey so far as a non-binary scientist of color has fortunately been nothing but warm and encouraging. The field of astronomy and astrophysics, which is what I study, has historically been very undiverse, but there are incredible efforts being made now to ensure that the field is welcoming to people of all backgrounds and that it begins to represent more of what the world actually looks like. I am proud that when I came to the Graduate Center and to higher education, that I did decide to be honest about my identity and to be true to myself, because higher education, academia has long been a very closed world, and those who are trying to enter this world, who come from backgrounds that have until this point been very underrepresented, I think can feel a lot of anxiety about being true to themselves in that setting. The more of us who are open and honest about exactly who we are in the world of academia, the more visible we are in the broader community. And I think it's very important to walk this path with as much visibility as you're comfortable with, but always with a mind that there are others to whom we can be an inspiration and a comfort once they enter this world themselves.
Over 40% of Gen Zers have considered participating in ethical non-monogamy. However, its roots in the gay community often go unrecognized. We met with a licensed sex therapist and an erotica author to discuss not just what polyamory is, but the different cultural experiences that shape it.
Queer folks have had to fight for their own space in the world and recreate a social structure and expectation. There's this script of how we're supposed to interact in the world, and queer folks immediately don't fit into that script. So what is our script? We get to define it. And I think that's where I started also questioning the concept of monogamy. My name is Ash Oliver. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I've been working in the field of therapy for over 10 years now. And for almost 3 years, I've had my own online practice focusing on queer folks, queer therapy, polyamory, that I've named Transcend Queer Therapy. I think nowadays most people would use polyamory as the umbrella term, which I think can get a little confusing. I tend to define polyamory as having multiple attached or romantic relationships, which means there is a deeper level of connection, more so than maybe casual or like friends with benefits type of thing. So folks who do like open relationships or ethical non-monogamy might not have those type of prioritized multiple relationships. It could be a sexual orientation and or romantic orientation. I've seen folks be wired more non-monogamous, and I've seen people wired monogamous, and both of those are valid. And I've seen people approach it as a lifestyle. Some people refer to themselves as like ambiamorous, meaning that depending on their situation, they're cool with non-monogamy or monogamy. So I think that's a really individualized choice. People use all sorts of labels. Some people will just have what they call an open relationship or friends with benefits. There's solo polyamory, where people would refer to themselves as their priority and main relationships. A new thing I'm hearing a lot about is relationship anarchy. Basically, like your relationship is determined by you and your partner only, not like a metamor. Metamor basically means your partner's partner. And then hierarchy can be a touchy topic nowadays. Someone might be your primary partner and they take precedence in your life, and then people might use terms like secondary or tertiary. I like to talk about realistic hierarchy in my practice because there is hierarchy in somewhere in your life. Like if you have kids, your kids ought to be your priority. There's the inherent hierarchy within that. A lot of folks, I think, engage in non-monogamy because we are trying to have a sense of like freedom that we may not have experienced before, and also creating like a chosen family. And you see that a lot in queer communities in general. So we want to not recreate the toxic family relationships that we're trying to heal from.
For years, unfortunately, I lived a very monogamous, heterosexual, normative life. And through the process of trying to adhere to heterosexuality and monogamy, I realized that in my core, it wasn't always quite for me. My name is Carolyn Tony. I write erotica and I write fiction, and I love talking about relationships, sex, and trying to break the stigma on what it means to be intimate in different types of intimacy. For the most part of my dating life, I was a serial dater. And mind you, throughout all those times, there was always something with this person that didn't work quite right. So in 2015, I broke up with my ex, and like before I assumed that I'll find somebody, no problem. And then reality set in that dating is not easy as it once was. People don't necessarily want to meet you anymore. People just want to f you. I was constantly having bad date after bad date, and I started writing about it because it was a form of therapy for me. I started writing Tales of Tony as a blog, and then I joined the writing group, and they would discuss like swinger parties and sex parties, and I was just like, that sounds like fun. I'm not looking for a serious relationship right now, so why not consider trying it? But I never considered it because I didn't think it was something real that could happen. And again, it's not as if people walk down the street holding hands in triplets, right? But when I finally like joined the group and I heard a lot of people more talking about it and being honest about it, and I was like, oh, this is a real option for me. And it kind of clicked that maybe that's why all these relationships, there was always something that was wrong, because I was expecting one person to be my everything. It was unfair to them, and it was also unfair for me to also have to contort to be everything that they wanted me to be. When I entered into the world of swinger, I wasn't looking for a relationship. I did not want to date. My partner, who became my boyfriend, saw me in action. I told him from jump when we started dating that I was with two other people. He was okay with it. Like, it worked really great for our dynamic. Polyamory has to be ethical and equal for both people. Either you both have the same guidelines that can opt out in and out of it with consent to each other, or it's not going to work. It was really important for me to make sure that I didn't get lost in the sea of polyamory. If you don't know what you really want, you're just all over the place and doing a bunch of different things you may not want to do. So now it's just me loving my toys right now. I have a partner, they're not the one, but the sex is great. I'm still trying to do this dating thing. I'm not beholden to it because, like I said, I have a lot of loves in my life already that give me satisfaction in different ways, and it doesn't have to be romantic and intimate love.
A little while back, we met a dancer who uses artistry to honor their Indonesian ancestry and transgender identity. Let's take a look.
My ethnic identity and my mixed race identity always was more clear to me when I was younger. So I like to say that I definitely understood that I was mixed race before I could articulate that I was queer and trans. My name is Zave Martoharjono. I'm an artist. Art making has been the place for me to explore all of these questions about myself. Both my Italian-American family and my Indonesian family and we all lived in different countries when I was growing up. So seeing my family was going for visits, sometimes to Indonesia, sometimes to Canada, and sometimes to Massachusetts. All of my extended family is very warm and loving and close in their ways, but I don't necessarily feel I have a particular alliance to one or the other. I was always exotic to my white family, and I was always white to my Asian family. So there was never really an affirmative place to land. My mother raised me as a single mother. Even though there is a big Indonesian community in New York, I didn't grow up inside of that. My artistic practice has been a place for me to really actually do research and make work that pays homage to my ancestral cultural practices. I also take those stories and I queer them, or I make them sort of politically relevant to questions of persecution or crisis that we're going through today. Being trans has been a very kind of slow and long process. I think that the reason I was so tentative about it is because across my life, there has never been one place for me to belong. There was never a clear, yes, you are part of this group. My family and I moved to Brooklyn, and I was meeting a lot of queer and trans people. I was meeting a lot of organizers and activists and musicians, and I was going out a lot, and I was always gravitating towards trans people. It took me a really long time to actually affirm myself as trans, because there aren't any trans people in my family, and because I didn't really have the language for it. My family is supportive of my queerness and me being trans. I don't think they necessarily understand exactly what that means. I'm non-binary and I'm genderqueer, so I actually embrace all genders. I embrace my feminist, I embrace my masculinity, and I know also that neither my feminist nor my masculinity are typical. When I first started taking hormones and talking about it with my family, I think they wanted to know, oh, are you, so you're not a woman and you identify as a man. So when I was having those conversations with my family 10 years ago, there wasn't a bigger conversation going on. They didn't have any tools to draw from. Trans history and trans identity is so big and beautiful and complicated. In 2007, I started as a graduate student at the City College of New York, and that's when I started making experimental films about my identities, about my ethnic identities, about my gender identities, and also about my sort of ancestral longing for a sense of belonging inside of my Indonesian heritage. Over the years, I really have been trying to understand more about Indonesian dance, ritual practices, and cultural practices. From my mother and from my oma, I got a lot of the sort of mythological stories, and we would go see Indonesian dance theater when we would visit home, when we would go to Jakarta or when we would go to Bali. Art is a space where you can have a really complex conversation about something like identity. I self-produce all my work. I'm the person raising all the money to pay all the artists I work with. I am truly an independent artist in the sense that I don't have a lot of institutional support. I don't have a lot of structures of support, so it really is kind of grassroots. How is it that communities of color, indigenous communities, queer and trans communities, how is it that we are supporting each other, dealing with the multiple crises that we face? I've been feeling it's more important as an artist to focus on what keeps us going and how it is that we're surviving these impossible times. I'm really interested in narrative that is ambiguous, that is sensorial. When I think about spaces, the spaces that I exist in, the spaces that I travel through, I guess I think about it as these different universes. They're all kind of in a choreography. They're all in some kind of rotation. In my body, all of these identities are flowing. They're all encapsulated, particularly with making performance and dance, I've been finding that there's so much space to articulate my different identities without having to explain them. I'm 38. For me, these identities and these spaces are not static at all. As I get older, I think the challenge is to keep changing as the worlds that I'm a part of evolve. This year, I lost one of my trans elders, Rusty Mae Moore, who was a woman who really made a huge difference for young trans women in New York City. She opened her home to trans women who didn't have a place to live in the 90s, and she was an activist and she was a professor. When I think about legacy and my personal legacy, I don't think about it as an individual. I think so much about my queer elders who, when I was young, just really modeled to me how to organize community, how to bring people together, and how to make an open space to do creative work.
Our next segment takes us to the world of photography, where we meet an artist activist who creates images that challenge stereotypes.
Almost all of my series have to do with me. So instead of getting angry, what do? I start a project. My name is Lola Flash, and I'm an artist who uses photography to deal with themes around racism, sexism, and homophobia, to name a few. I grew up just across the water in Montclair, New Jersey. My mom had bought me a dark room when I was in high school. That really sort of got me so excited about photography, just working in the darkroom hours upon hours. So I decided that I wanted to go to college for photography. When I was at Maryland Institute of Art, I started doing this cross-color work. By changing black to white, I realized okay, I can make black people white people black, and vice versa. So as a kid, I was very aware that, and still am, that black in the dictionary says it's bad, dirty, and wrong. And I knew that white meant pure, innocent, perfect, And so in my pictures, I was changing that around. And I think part of being an artist is to show the world how you see or how you'd like to see it. I was photographing intersectionality. I realized when I was in school that this was a way to talk about blackness in a really different way that other folks had been talking about it. So in college, I suppose that's really when I think about myself as really becoming serious about my photography. It was wonderful to be able to just express myself the way I wanted to and not make a big deal about it. I suppose one would say in those times I was androgynous. So I always wore boys' clothes. My parents were fine with it. I kind of always knew I was gay.
Epidemic unprecedented in the history of American medicine.
AIDS was discovered first in young homosexual men. There is no cure, and it is often fatal.
In 1981, when I graduated from college, that was the first year that someone was officially diagnosed with AIDS, HIV. I think they called it the gay cancer then. I felt like I had to do work that had to be political. And so then when I came to New York, ACT UP had just started, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. And I joined fighting for free health care and all kinds of things around HIV. Being a part of ACT UP was a way for me to literally put my body in the street and talk about, these issues that were affecting us. Being queer is a very big part of me. And so I feel like those kinds of things are what has helped me continue thinking about my communities in a more positive, important way. It's interesting when I look at the body of my works. Most photographers, we work in series. I really focus on gender fluidity, I would say, in my Surmise series. Now that series looks at, for lack of a better way of explaining it, girls who look like boys and boys who look like girls, and then everyone in between. My SALT series focuses on age and ageism. It's for women who are over 70, who still have the joie de vivre of life. In my Legend series, I photograph people in my age group who were bold enough and brave enough to just step out in the street the way that they felt that they should. My longest running series is called Surpassing. I have it here tattooed on my arm, and it's about being above passing. My latest series is Syzygy, and that's based on Afrofuturism. In some ways, all of the themes that are in all of my projects have all kind of converged in Syzygy. My work is probably in more than a dozen museums: MoMA, Whitney, African American Museum in Washington, D.C., just to name a few. And I'm ecstatic about those acquisitions. I'm really excited and happy and proud of the way that the gay community has seen me. I received a Sustained Achievement Award from Queer Art a couple of years ago. Of course, my work is for the world, but for my own community to see me and to give me that award was really special. I feel really excited about the future. I look at the youth and I see they're just so much more open than my generation was to sexuality. So many of them are non-binary. I think that the work that we're doing at Queer Art, where we have like a mentorship program for younger artists, we pair younger artists with older artists, I think those kinds of programs are amazing. I wish that I had something like that when I grew up. My message would be to stick with what you love. You have to be passionate about it. I mean, there's just so much to do with being Black, being queer, and being a woman that I'll never run out of themes to deal with.
That's our show. If you want to know more about the guests we featured, check out our Instagram page at Shades of Us TV and online at tv.cuny.edu. I'm Darryl Brown. See you next time on Shades of Us.